Welcome to the Business of Travel, the official podcast of the Global Business Travel Association. I'm Kevin Sullivan, Treasurer and Director at Large of the GBTA Board of Directors, and in my day job, Managing Director of Sales for Southwest Business at Southwest Airlines based in Dallas, Texas. It's my pleasure to be moderating today's discussion. On today's podcast, we'll look at how the economy and other factors are affecting business travel as we head into 2025. At this time of year, when many of the world's most traveling companies are establishing their next calendar year's travel budgets, there are plenty of tailwinds and certainly some headwinds that are going on around us. I'm excited about today's topics and our guests who will help me unpack the insights. I'm joined today by two fellow GBTA board members, Ben Park, Executive Director for Travel and Sustainability at Parexel, based in Berlin, Germany, and Catherine Farrell, Senior Manager of Sales Digital Marketing Communication for Delta Airlines, based in Atlanta, Georgia. And our special guest, UBS Research Analyst Jared Castle, based in London, England. Welcome, everybody, and thank you so much for joining today's discussion. So let's start by sharing some of the latest GBTA industry poll data as our jumping off point. In November 2024 constituent poll, we found that 7 in 10 buyers are optimistic about the industry's outlook for the year ahead. Additionally, regardless of the region, at least half of travel buyers say they expect their business travel spend to increase year over year compared to 2024. And on average, 15% expected decrease. Are you surprised by those stats? And how do you see it from your area of expertise? Ben, let's start with you.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin, and a good question. I mean, I'm not surprised by the statistics overall, and I can just mirror that. A lot of my colleagues also seeing that price and cost will naturally drive, even with the same trip numbers, the cost up in the next year. But what I'm observing is that the difference between the industry is getting larger and larger. While some are doing very well and will spend a lot more next year, others might reduce or stay stable. So it's really a mixed bag. Specific to the pharmaceutical industry, it turns out that in-person meetings seem to be really important, and that's why budgets are set to aside to collaborate and to gain future revenue.
Excellent. Catherine.
Thanks so much, Ben. That was really interesting. And I think that these stats are also somewhat consistent with what we're seeing globally at Delta from the corporate segment and hearing from our customers. However, 85% of our customers say that they expect their travel spend year over year to either increase or stay flat in 2025. We're also seeing that domestic is quite strong given the capacity levels that we're finishing up the year with, and transatlantic should be right behind. We've also seen uplift in Trans-Pacific, and with some capacity adjustments in Latin America, we've also seen some improvements there as well. So overall, we're seeing that the strength of the corporate segment isn't concentrated in just one geography or sector, but instead is broad-based, which really points to the health of corporate travel overall.
Excellent. Jared.
Yeah, great. I guess similar view. I mean, we certainly are not surprised that people want to travel more in 2025. Last 2 weeks, we put out our UBS Evidence Lab Travel Managers Survey. This is close to 400 procurement managers globally. And the survey gets conducted in France, UK, Germany, US, China, and Australia. Overall, it found that about 76% of respondents saw their travel budget rising. So I guess similar to what Catherine's saying. And across all respondents, the budgets are expected to rise by around 11%. What was interesting within the detail, it seems like the US and UK were a bit more optimistic, and in France it was slightly less optimistic, but still a high single-digit increase in travel spend. And then just lastly, I would add, it does look a little bit more positive for hotels than aviation, but it's really much at the margin in terms of the numbers.
Excellent, Jared. And yes, as a primary U.S. domestic airline, we remain optimistic about the outlook. Southwest Airlines has witnessed consistent year-over-year build across all of our business travel segments, especially a pop in small business meetings, groups, and event travel. Ben touched on the importance of meeting in person, so I think that aligns with that. And our internal voice of the buyer data aligns also with GBTA's positive forecast, suggesting that business travel has normalized and that we'll continue to see a moderate growth in 2025. So let's move to the next question. Of course, in any year, the economic outlook typically has a big effect on business travel budgets and whether those budgets get spent or exceeded as the year rolls along. In many parts of the world, national and federal banks have reduced interest rates and borrowing costs in recent weeks and months. Headlines are again proclaiming a soft landing here in the US and in other parts of the world. How does the current economic forecast impact your company's own view of its business and whether business travel can help more or less with reaching your goals? And Jared, I'll start with you.
Well, I think firstly, as it relates to business travel, I mean, we are seeing markets where we think demand will be positive. The UBS Global Economist estimate that for next year GDP will be up 2.9%, and for 26, 2.6%. So that has to be a starting point for the demand. At the same time, I think it's been well flagged that on the supply side in certain markets, it's quite constrained, at the moment. So, from our side, this suggests that the travel market should be buoyant going into 2025.
Excellent. Catherine, I'd welcome your thoughts.
Sure. Thanks so much, Kevin. So at Delta, we've seen that consumers are continuing to prioritize premium experiences, and our core customer base is in a healthy financial position where that travel spend is remaining a top category. Over 50% of Delta's revenue is premium revenue, and the corporate segment is important here, not only because the premium revenue is coming from those traveling on company business, but we also find that those same business travelers are more likely to book premium for those leisure vacations as well. So taking a step back a bit, as the national and federal banks reduce interest rates, one of the things that we foresee is that frees up the funds that those companies would have spent on interest to invest more in their workforce and their organization, both which drive incremental corporate travel spend. So we anticipate a sunny outlook as well.
Yeah, Catherine, I agree. While we have differing products for business travelers, the continued healthy demand in both business and leisure travel persists, with the elevated traveler experience being at the forefront. Southwest Airlines, we are seeing many more unique business travelers today than we did pre-pandemic. However, they're taking fewer trips, but longer trips, and this metric continues to improve. A stable economy absolutely signals continued health for the airlines, as all airlines continue to focus on reducing costs, which have been on the rise since the pandemics. I think, of course, and Catherine said this, all airlines welcome increased business travel that delivers the associate fare premiums, ancillaries, as well as traveler loyalty, both for personal and business travel. Ben, your thoughts?
Yeah, no, so lower interest rates are always great. I'm looking forward to lower fares passed on then to us as customers. No, but joking aside, but first of all, Jared, thank you very much for not calling out Germany on the GDP with minus 0.1 or so. So thank you for that. I'm doing this myself. But overall, globally seen, lower interest rates are generally what I think a very good sign if they turn out, because usually most companies have a debt structure. And so this means if the interest rates are lower, they've got more budgets potentially for future investments. And a part of this might be allocated to business travel because traveling for business is generating future revenue. So that's why, especially in the pharmaceutical and research area, lower interest rates are a key indicator to future potential of like small biopharma companies being able to invest into research. And that's why this is for us a very good sign if it turns out, because then we know the potential for the pipeline of new business is going up, which in the last years wasn't as we like. The pie didn't got a lot larger. But overall, I think everybody's looking forward to lower interest rates in this industry.
Ben, I'm just responding based upon GBTA's economic impact study earlier this year. They do forecast a more moderate increase to flat fares next year. That said, with fewer seats in the marketplace, that could change quickly. So we'll all be paying attention to see how the fare dynamic plays out in 2025. Well, let's move to a subject that I get asked a lot about by customers I meet with: sustainability. With so much recovery still going on from climate change related to storms this fall, our attention is clearly needed now more than ever to ensure a prosperous and safe future for people, planet, and our sector overall. What's the view as a buyer, supplier, or analyst on what we need to do to drive more sustainable business travel sector? Catherine, would you care to lead?
Sure. So I think as a global airline with membership on the GBTA Foundation Sustainability Leadership Council, Delta definitely understands that sustainability is a key factor that will influence our products over the next decade. The industry is doing a good job of coming up with viable solutions like SAF to lower our carbon emissions. And longer term, our aircraft manufacturers are looking at clean energy forms of transportation. But that is going to require some time to perfect. We at Delta believe that addressing the climate impact of aviation is essential to helping meet global emissions goals while also preserving the really critical role that I think we all on this call recognize that air travel plays in global connectivity and commerce. So that's why we continue to focus our strategy on decarbonizing our airline operations and value chain. And we do have a goal of achieving net zero emissions by 2050. As a side note, for those interested on this topic, I have to compliment the Sustainability Summit that took place a few weeks ago in Copenhagen. Kevin, I know you and I both attended that, but I've attended a lot of industry events over my career, and I would say that those educational sessions and the main stage speakers were truly exceptional.
Absolutely. Ben, would you care to respond as a representative of the buyer community?
Yeah, definitely happy to. I mean, sustainability is crucial. I think nobody will say climate change isn't visible in the last years or months if we look at the storms. And I think as a buyer, we are in a unique position because we control the travel policy, which separates us from the leisure business, where we see a very, very large say-do gap. So within the corporate travel, we have a chance to really tackle sustainability and also influence traveler behavior through nudging. And that's why I think it's really key that everybody looks at, okay, what's our position as a buyer regarding sustainable aviation fuel and other carbon budgets, and also looking at sustainable suppliers. So suppliers who share the same objectives of decarbonization. But most important, I mean, we are all in competition in our industry. And so, unfortunately, I think sustainability needs a lot of regulation to create level playing field. I guess it's the same for US airlines. You just want to do something, but it needs to be equal across the industry sectors. And I think that's where all buyers are looking forward, what regulations are coming in place. And there is a lot coming in the next year.
Thanks, Ben. And yes, Catherine, I agree with you. It was great to spend the day with you and Ben in Copenhagen at the GBTA European conference talking all things sustainability. Incredible valuable content that was delivered. One of the things that I found fascinating from the conference is GBTA shared its sustainability acceleration global benchmark, which was developed, in collaboration with Accenture, that ranks the current state of climate action on a maturity score of 0 to 5, with 0 denoting no activity and 5 denoting leading practice action. And as of 2024, which is the first baseline year for the challenge, the overall global sustainability maturity score across all industry sectors ranked 1.3 out of 5. That signals interest, yet limited action. And our industry, Ben, you said it perfectly, our industry will require political and government support around the globe to make this happen and bring it to life. From my perspective, the aviation industry, and Catherine touched on some specifics at Delta, are making significant investments in more efficient aircrafts, equipment, recycling efforts, and especially sustainable aviation fuel, or SAF. And I believe one of the areas of improvement is the shared cost for SAF. SAF is critical to the success of sustainable travel. And given the premiums today, it really will require short-term a collective effort from the entire ecosystem to scale productions. And many airlines have already launched differing versions of these types of programs, and really are just waiting for our corporate partners to increase their demand. So more to go here, but Jared, I'd welcome your take as an analyst.
Sure. Well, I think it's probably, reiterating some of the comments. I mean, first of all, I think it's very fair to say that not all markets are the same in terms of regulation and taxes being imposed to get us there. I mean, overall, I guess the broad travel industry is only about 5% of emissions, with airlines normally coming out somewhere around 2.5, 3. But it's really the growth in the industry. This is a growth industry that, without mitigation, that percent of global emissions would grow. I think what we are seeing is governments, in particular in Europe, through regulation, kind of forcing companies to improve. And most of the time this comes through in a higher cost of production, be it, as you mentioned, sustainable aviation fuels, carbon emission schemes like ETS, and global schemes starting to kick in, under the International Civil Aviation Authority from really 2027, kind of more global acceptance. But what higher taxation does in an industry which has a high elasticity is it clearly reduces some parts of the demand curve. And as previously said, I mean, the industry has committed in most cases to be net zero by 2050, and that means a lot of capital has to be spent either by those who are providing the service, or those who want to provide to those parties the product to decarbonize, i.e., in the case of aviation, the manufacturers, what products are they going to make available? And we're also seeing, from some of our companies actually, greater use of green bonds now to kind of, I guess, help them incentivize their own decarbonization. And lastly, whenever we've done surveys, consumers always say, the environment's important, and actually, they will, sacrifice here or there. But I really think when you actually look at carbon offsets, in particular for aviation, really a minimal amount of customers actually offset their travel with buying carbon offsets, through the airline in particular. So it might be worth getting, some views from yourself. So I think it is, I think a lot of it is left to the government, and along with, maybe also on the corporate side. There's a big corporate focus on reducing scope 1, 2, and 3 carbon emissions, including at my organization. So I think maybe a lot gets said by the consumer, but feels a bit like it's government and corporate which is leading more the charge.
Excellent. Thank you, Jared. Appreciate those insights. So let's change gears for a minute. We continue to see that a major driver of business travel transformation is the impact of evolving workforce and the related travel for work dynamics. We are hearing more companies in the headlines expecting their workers in the office full time, while other companies continue to navigate hybrid versus fully remote positions. What are you seeing from your own company and your customers, and how are business travel policies affected by this? Ben, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing a lot of news from companies, as you mentioned, who are asking their employees to return to the office with maybe some questionable objectives. But for us specifically, and I think that's to the clinical research industry, which is acting globally on projects, it remains fully hybrid. So people can work from home and often balance the family need. And this is due to the need for specific talent. I think so that's why this industry specific. What we are seeing is that there is a large increase in demand for collaboration travel and internal meetings. So people don't meet at the office so much, but they need to meet in person once every quarter or whatever, every 6 months, and on for projects as well. So there's definitely a reason for people traveling, and the reason code we're capturing is changing. And also all of a sudden strange airports showing up where people have moved in the pandemic out to the country. And I'm learning sometimes new airport IATA codes, which I should know.
Well, and Ben, that absolutely aligns with the increase airlines are seeing in terms of groups and meetings travel, right? And not having those 2019 pre-pandemic footprints. I think we're all learning more about unique airport codes that weren't in the traditional transient program. Jared, how about from your perspective?
Yeah, I think it's probably fair to say, again, whenever we've asked business and consumers, video conferencing, comes up a lot in terms of replacing a percent of travel, anywhere up to 1/5. I mean, I think what's interesting to me is that business travel seems to be most impacted on the aviation side rather than on the accommodation side, where we're pretty close to fully recovered by volumes, which isn't the case when it comes to aviation. So I think virtual conferencing, I think also linked to kind of corporate thinking more about their footprint, also thinking more about long haul versus short haul travel, has impacted kind of business travel. And the truth is, what COVID-19 actually did is it just accelerated certain trends, some of which we're speaking about now, video conferencing, the environmental trends. It seems like that was accelerated during COVID-19.
Jared, we wouldn't be able to have this clear conversation today from Germany and London and Atlanta and Dallas if we didn't see vast improvement in terms of video conferencing. From maybe an airline perspective, not sure that replaces the true value of sitting down face to face. On this topic over the last 5 years, just the industry has made a structural shift in terms of how we work and continue to adapt to the changing corporate workplace environment with the pendulum swinging all directions. Southwest Airlines, from my personal perspective, we're a company and culture that really thrives on relationships, teamwork, and belonging. And for us, as we continue to evolve, we're embracing those strengths, which actually means the majority of our headquarter Dallas-based employees work on site to collaborate and innovate. And our policy has certainly changed. Today, it states 4 or 5 days in the office based upon the role. However, we are we know it's important to create and give employees flexibility in their day-to-day lives. So that's something I think a benefit that's come out of the pandemic. As it relates to our customers, I've had many conversations, and we are hearing similar trend, at least here in the US, of more returning to the office, either in a hybrid or full-time capacity. One thing I do believe that I've seen is open and engaged offices have a direct correlation to business travel growth, I think, which also aligns with GBTA's most recent survey results that came up today, which is the importance of more in-person meetings and growing demand from travelers to return to the roads, railways, and the skies. Catherine, I'd love your thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Kevin. I think, similar to what you just said, at Delta, we're continuing to see corporations bringing people back into the office, with some companies even going back 5 days a week. And like you said as well, Kevin, our own Delta Global Sales Organization is also in the process of coming back into the office 4 days a week. So moving from a more hybrid schedule. And what we're seeing is that this return to office has fueled the desire for people to connect, not just over video, but face to face, to rebuild those relationships that were either lost or strained during those pandemic years. And while we do have this great forum that we're certainly leveraging in this conversation, the use of video chat is limited in terms of what you're able to do. And there's still, of course, great value in meeting face to face, but it is making an impact. I think there's a recent Wall Street firm that released results to a corporate survey that stated 9 to 10% of corporate travel has been replaced by video chat, and that those are largely day trips overseas or across the country that were just really difficult for travelers. And so I think that this use of technology in the future will make it easier for people to take blended travel trips moving forward, extending work trips to include a vacation, or being able to even work remotely on from different locations a few times a year. I know this is something that I've personally done a few times in the past year, and I always really enjoy the opportunity to explore a new destination, come in earlier, extend a work trip at a location. I think we've all had the experience of visiting a place and really feeling like you haven't been there if you're only seeing the inside of a conference room or you never leave your hotel. So I hope that blended travel is here to stay on a personal note.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Great insights, Catherine, and I'm really enjoying this conversation. So what would you guys say is the biggest challenge as well as the biggest opportunity when you think about business travel overall in 2025 as a buyer, as a supplier, or an analyst looking in from the outside?
Should I
Jared,
go
let's
ahead?
start with you.
Jared.
Yes, Ben, jump right in.
Yeah. Sorry. We're not practicing the Brexit here. No. No. What I see as the biggest challenges and opportunities for business travel in 2025 are, first, that we all as buyers need to balance the increasing demand for business travel with our sustainability goals. So how do you allow people to meet and travel while not increasing your emissions generated? So this balancing act will be extremely important in the next year as 2030 is approaching quickly. The second thing is we need to stay flexible. That's a big challenge because we don't know political, economic, what will happen. So that's why it's kind of low visibility, I would say. And so that's why flexibility and balancing travel needs with sustainability goals are the challenges. The opportunities, funny enough, I think are AI, because AI can help our industry a lot in the next year to gain better data, to drive down cost of labor, so that the labor, which is very, very specific in our industry, can focus on the real meaningful things. And last but not least, I'm not giving up the hope next year. One opportunity is that finally the SAF purchase becomes easier, more regulated, and there is also scale. So on a positive note, even as a German, I think next year is the opportunity to finally see the SAF adoption going.
Absolutely. Ben, I can't believe we made it 30 minutes into this podcast, and it's the first time we heard about AI. Thank you for bringing up that important point. So, Jared, I will go back to you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I mean, I think, unfortunately, the world has seen a number of geopolitical shocks. So for me, on let's say a hope front and a positive front, I think if these got resolved, that would certainly be very positive for travel and the impact on some of the inputs into travel. I think probably the biggest worry, as always, as an analyst, are, literally the known unknowns, which again we've seen in the last few years, which really comes down to two things: acts of man or acts of nature. So you kind of know these, things can go against you, but both those areas tend to be incredibly disruptive for all kinds of travel, not just business but leisure. Impacts the global travel chain. So that would be the biggest worry, kind of the known unknowns.
Excellent. Catherine, I welcome your perspective.
Sure, absolutely. So, Ben, I am going to parrot you a bit here, but I think that one of the largest challenges we'll definitely need to address is something that we've already touched on and you touched on, and it's not unique to our vertical, but it is something that as an industry we'll need to address, and that's sustainability. In terms of opportunities, and what excites me most personally are the great opportunities from a technology perspective, particularly in the foundation that Delta has built. And we are also in the early stages of understanding the potential of artificial intelligence for our business. But there's definitely no question that there are some really interesting applications to provide opportunities for us across the business, whether that's on the revenue front or on the cost efficiency front, and even within my team's own marketing purview. The thing that we've really come to understand with AI is that, especially as you scale it, you need to make sure you have a strong foundation to build upon. And so that's some of the work that Delta has been undertaking, and more opportunities there. I think it's just a subject that offers so many opportunities. It's really exciting. So stay tuned.
Awesome. Thanks, Catherine. And yes, we have hit all of the buzzwords now with AI, sustainability, workplace transformation, global and geopolitical risks and impacts. So again, I think the insights are so meaningful. As an airline, especially with our domestic presence, I really look at the biggest challenge in the near future is the U.S. economy and global economy for that matter. We continue to monitor the rising costs and that impact to corporate travel budgets. Many of our customers expect stability with modest growth, but we know how quickly that could change if the economy takes another turn. However, there are so many reasons for optimism with continued airline operational stability, the focus on the traveler experience, the desire from travelers to travel again, and really finally, getting business done is more effective in person. I mentioned airline operational excellence is a priority for our industry. Unfortunately, that means that was our last question, so we could land this podcast on time. So a big thank you to Catherine, Ben, and Jared for sharing your unique and global insights today. Again, I'm Kevin Sullivan, and I thank all of you for listening and being part of today's conversation. If you have any questions or comments for the GBTA Board of Directors, please reach out to us anytime via email. You've been listening to The Business of Travel, the official podcast of the Global Business Travel Association. For more information about GBTA and our work, visit gbta.org and be sure to rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, thank you for listening.